Yeah. So last year at some point or the year before, I felt like everything was going quite well. I didn't really feel like I deserved it too much. I don't know where these feelings just cropped up from. I had a software company and living quite well in California. And I was going to bed at night thinking I had a beautiful house right by the water in a town called Sausalito outside of San Francisco. And I just kept thinking, who is this Belfast kid that deserves this? What have I done to deserve this? And
Mm.
I kept thinking about my dad, who had passed away a few years earlier. So my father was always ascribed to him that he worked himself to death, because my father could not stop working. And I felt very guilty. I felt very guilty because I had a fairly straightforward, easy life. I was brought up quite well and loved by both my parents, a little strict on one side and over mothered on the other, basically loved. And then all of a sudden came that I don't deserve all of this. But I was happy because there was a lot of responsibility. There was a lot of money coming in. So there were my kids' apartments in Dublin, there was my mother's home, there was ex-wives all being paid. I didn't have to, but I felt I should. And that in itself, I realized was actually buying me some freedom. I was paying even my children off to hide. I
Mm.
just gotten divorced, even to this very day when people ask me why you got divorced out of a 17-year marriage. I don't know. We were happy. I just was in this very destructive, cut everything out of my life way. And
Mm.
then overnight, my company collapsed. I rushed into a new company with abandonment, just charged into it, knowing with my experience that this is never going to work and it's really foolhardy. And of course, that didn't work. And then I just completely ran away. So that's where I was. I don't know why I ran away. It took me 18 months of sitting on an island in Greece
Yeah.
to I wouldn't even say find myself. I just was licking my wounds. And when I think about now the winter there, it was a very seriously depressed period. Even my mother to this day says, I'm so happy, son, you didn't spend a second winter there because I was getting very nervous about you.
Mm.
And for the first time in my life, I was drinking on my own heavily. The next morning, I'd wake up and there'd be broken lamps. And I was like,
Mm.
Jesus Christ, man, they got to really get a grip here. I stopped meditating, which I did every single day. I stopped that for a good 18 months, 2 years. So I think that's really where I was.
Yeah.
So I think the kind of light that I had and really was you for no particular reason. I saw your email one day. I reached out and you started.
Mm.
Gave me a session right there.
Yeah. So
And
that's when we started talking, was when you were on the island or in the restaurant business.
and the restaurant was fun, but the
Mm.
winters were not. The restaurant was only open in the summer.
Mm.
From October to June, I was on my own on a Greek island with
It's a long
500
winter.
people in the village.
That's a long winter.
It's a very long winter. It's not a cold winter,
Yeah.
but it's a bleak winter on your own. I think that we started talking at that point. I had completely poured through all of my funds, so I couldn't really afford anything at that stage. And I was just hiding, feeling very ashamed of myself because part of my self esteem was very much, it still is very much of, in my mind, it still defines me a little bit. I'm still quite ashamed if I can't pay for dinner. If I
Mm.
can't buy people things, I'm still quite ashamed of myself. I'm even quite ashamed to split things.
Yeah.
I feel like a loser if I have to split dinner with somebody. So that part of that hiding was that very shameful period that I just didn't have any money. Really meeting you was a first step towards rehumanizing myself. I didn't quite see myself as a human. I just saw myself as a very broken product, a product that was very good at one point, that knew how to make money, that knew how to build companies. And that if I don't know how to do that or I don't do that, there's not really much point. I'm defective at that stage. Yeah. So yeah, when we started talking, that's when I really started to go back inwards again and start to think about meditation. Bearing in mind, I didn't have a very full day. Like I
Mm.
had very little to do all day. I could have meditated for 8 hours and still had time to run marathons. So it's not like I was too busy to meditate. I consciously did not want to.
Yeah.
In my body, I felt nauseous at
Mm.
the thought of meditating, which was a surreal kind of feeling to feel sick,
Mm.
feel nauseated by the very fact of meditating.
Yeah, given that you've been doing it for a long
Oh,
time. Yeah, yeah,
10 years at that point,
yeah.
teaching it, doing 3 hours a day at some points, 3 hours a session at some points, and
Mm,
getting to the stage in my life where it physically made me nauseous, the idea of meditating. I think that at that point, there was that, I think, Enda, what you did bring was this non-commercial, genuinely very concerned about somebody. There was a genuine concern coming from yourself, a genuine desire to help a fellow human being
mm,
with the skills that you have. And I found that very admirable because I really just thought I was fairly washed up. And I think that at that point, I had quite an intimidating personality. Most people wouldn't confront me. They would just think, I'll leave him to it. He'll figure it out. But I wasn't actually figuring it out. I really was not figuring this out. And I was quite down. But I knew deep down that I was a good manifester. I've always been a good manifester. So I am a good manifester. But of course, that also means that you can manifest very negative things in your life.
yeah.
If you feel like you're finished and a loser and washed up and should be on the scrap heap, that's what you manifest. And that's exactly what I did manifest.
Mm,
Remote, isolated, lost on an island. Of course, there's always this kind of thing in my head where I did see how lucky I was. I had a house in Greece, which is a pretty nice thing. It was right on the water. So it was pretty nice to be there. It was a beautiful setting. But for some reason, stuff like that made me feel even more guilty. You know, even when I'm washed up, even when I'm down and out, I'm still gifted with a very beautiful surroundings. What the fuck have I done? There are people in Africa dying, man. I started to watch programs about ghettos, and I don't know why. I became quite obsessed with ghettos and how people live and how badly they live.
mm,
I still have found it quite inexplicable to this very day. So really, how did you make life better? I think that you did a few sessions with me. Those sessions put me on the road to starting to meditate again. I started to meditate every other day or every couple of days. Meditation came very easily. And then I became quite obsessed with meditation again, where I got back into it, meditating maybe twice a day. And I think once you start meditating, you're removed from detritus of your life.
yeah.
You can rise above the junk of your life and see who you really are. And so I think within a period of a very short time, I was able to rise above it and recreate a new life for myself in a different country, basically by just manifesting it, the desire to go somewhere. So really what you did was kickstart that and push me in a direction where you opened up certain areas of me that have been very closed, my heart and parts of my mind. And yeah, I opened that area up.
Yeah. It was a pleasure working with you as well. And it was fascinating. Your story was fascinating. And you still ended up on your feet, right? And like you say, relative. Everything's relative. And then the restaurant business I found intriguing. And then that was facing ridiculous restrictions and cops coming in and fining people for not wearing masks and
No
going to the
way.
kitchen and making sure everyone can't breathe in there either.
That's right.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's right. Yeah.
so it's just ridiculous stuff you were up against. So now you've moved country, right? And you're running a startup that helps find other startups, right?
Yeah.
So it's a tech industry mostly, right?
Yeah, it can be. We work with companies that are revenue, they already have revenue. So it's called a Series A. It's companies who need that big kind of 3 to 5 million euro jump. But we've also got another arm in which we are looking at female-led companies. And that can be from inception. We want to mentor them from inception all the way through. So that could be just a couple of people with ideas. I do love that part too. I think that through the recent sessions we've done, what I do feel that in my core is this is what I like. This is what it's given to me. It's given me knowledge of what moves me, what motivates me, what is interesting to me. Even through meditation, I was still too superficial about what I wanted in life. I didn't want things because of the desire. I didn't want money and houses and boats. I didn't want them because I wanted them. I wanted them because I felt unsafe in life. I felt scared. This is one thing I've actually really come to realize, which it never dawned on me in 50 years that I was scared. But money made me feel safe because the first thing I do when I get money is I lock myself away. I buy a house that is big and like an apartment that is just big, and I can live there without even having to go out. I don't have to mix with other people. So
Mm.
money to me is not a fun thing. It's a safety thing. It's a way I can cut the planet off. I can get rid of everybody. So I think that one of the things that your sessions has brought to me is that I'm beginning to see the core of who I am. And I think that part of what I talk to you a lot is about this core that I keep seeing.
Mm.
There's sides of me that I didn't even know existed, like fear, like this terrified kid, which I didn't even know was still there. And then from there, being able to converse with myself, to get to know myself. And then from there, really getting to know what motivates me, what moves me. And what moves me is helping other companies. Ironically, a man who tried to detach himself from life, literally buying privacy, buying isolation, is now moving into a business where I'm completely upfront. Like my daily life is about talking and confronting and dealing with other companies. Just a few years ago, my entire life was about pushing everybody up front, and I'm vanishing into the background. I would do presentations, I would do speeches as a CEO, but I didn't want anybody to come near me, really. I had people for sex, I had people for cleaning, I had people for love, I had people for PR, I had people for everything. No single person to do anything.
Yeah.
And I realized how distant that was, how isolating that was. Putting my kids up in beautiful apartments, so I didn't really feel guilty, but ultimately I did. So I think now that after your sessions, what I do feel is a closer connection to the core of myself. I hate to admit that I think I'm more complicated than most people that maybe you dealt with. I think that there might be some people who feel like, eureka, that's it. And I haven't quite felt like that. So I'm disappointed in myself that I'm not more of a eureka person for you. I wish I was, but I think that maybe there is more people that need more of a drip effect, more of a wearing down of time, more this kind of carving out who they are in life. And maybe I'm like that.
If it's more complex, then it's going to be a slower process as well.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Like we're like layers of an onion. Another little layer, another little layer, another little layer.
Yeah.
And you're very self-aware anyway with all the meditation. I guess you probably thought that you knew yourself inside out.
Well, I thought I knew what I wanted to know. Yeah, that's completely true. I thought I knew myself inside out. Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess with everything, there's different levels to this, right?
Incredible. Total strangers I've been confronted with. People and entities and feelings and corners of myself I would never have guessed in a million years existed.
Yeah.
And I think even to the point, and where I've even changed my philosophy in life, that the only real function on this earth is to get to know yourself. It just feels like the journey of what we're supposed to do. And that to me resonates a little bit, that I do love the idea of life being a journey. I love the idea of companies being a journey. I love the idea of all of that building and the journey of building. So when I start to look at the foundation of myself, I'm beginning to think, wow, that really is what we should be taught from a very young age. It should be our main function.
Yeah. And there's another one. It's like we're here to learn how to manipulate energy as human beings as well. And you've had some really interesting experiences with the energetics of the session as well. Remember you were saying you had to stop and get up and come back, or thought your head was going to pop at one point, right? Because it was like Kundalini-like energy and it was all residing in your head. It wasn't going anywhere. It was just actually all building up there, and you just opened your eyes and just...
Yeah, I had to. There's a lot of energetic movement there, a lot of energetic movement. And that, I wouldn't call it a panic attack, but at one point there was a slight panic that I was just getting too close to myself. It felt like there was a wall there, and it just was lowering, and I didn't really want to see what was beyond. I just began to panic a little bit as to what was beyond it.
Yeah.
And I think that for many people like me and other people who like to create companies, who are pretty high achievers or like to focus their lives on achieving stuff, we do build a persona of who we are. We're very much a construct. It's very necessary to live the lifestyle of an ambitious person, to build a construct of yourself. You struggle if you don't build a construct of yourself, because your world is built around a lifestyle that is really not achievable by many people. So there must be a surrealness about it. There must be a lack of reality in
Yeah.
what you build. I'm a working class guy who wants to build $100 million, $200 million companies. Why?
Mm.
My uncle was a van driver. My father's an electrician. Why would I want this? What is the motivation behind this? So I think in order to try to achieve these things, you have to create a construct of who you are. You have to be your own superhero, and you have to have your own villains inside yourself. You have to be the antagonist and protagonist. So over time, when you get to your 50s, like me, the real you is kind of lost a little bit. I don't know what was the original motivator. You just know that you were passionate and driven. And I've been driven since I was a teenager to just build and travel and build in different countries. And I completely lost who I was. The layers of me that had built up, that were fabricated, had smothered the very person that I was. Now, meditation did help me a lot. Bearing in mind, I went into meditation to manifest better. I didn't go into meditation to know myself. I wanted to create things. I wanted to be more focused on creation. I started to realize that I could visualize things and create them within a period. My goal was to manifest quicker and more adroitly and more streamlined. It was purely selfishly motivated. It was purely materialistically motivated. To create a better house, to create a better body, to create But I think when you start to get into meditation, you soon learn that it's hard to maintain those things. And there were times in my life when I didn't want to meditate because I felt too numb. I wanted the pain. I wanted to feel a bit of pain. Meditation can somehow numb pain.
Yeah, I worked with a client who had used Vipassana meditation for about 15 years as an avoidance strategy. There was unresolved childhood stuff. So they'd religiously an hour and a half every day. When we worked together, it just cracked the whole thing open.
Yeah.
But then the weekly sessions we were doing were feeding into the meditation.
Absolutely.
The daily meditation. So they were both really helping each other. But what we did was we just pared back all the stuff that was hiding the childhood stuff that needed to be just let go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So once that was done, then it was perfect.
Yeah. I think one of the most interesting things that I've experienced with you is this idea of letting go, giving you the keys. Because I am a detailed person, so I struggle to do guided meditation. Because if somebody kind of says you walk into a house, I think, what's a house look like? Bricks are there. Is it a modern house? Is it an old house? Give me more description. What does this look like? And I then walked out, I moved down the hall and I opened the door and they say, you look at the door, I thought I moved too quickly. Let me back up here a bit. I struggle a little bit with guided meditation because I move too fast with a process and I have too much details in my head. So this idea, the first time ever, in terms of this guided process, that I just don't even listen to you. I just blank out. I find a place in my body, losing my heart or my breath or my third eye. And I just go and sit on a beach, really. I go and I sit on a beach and relax and then let my subconscious kind of do all the work, which you'd say, Martin, you fuck off, and subconscious, you come up and I want to talk to you, not you, Martin. And a very cathartic feeling to just sit in the back seat. And it's the first time I've really done that. Of course, it is also part of another layer of overachievers is the control element. It's the idea of letting somebody take control, which is a very big process. So even though I meditate every day, there's a lot of my meditation that is still very much part of the things I'm trying to get through. My meditation almost enforces the things I don't want anymore. I don't want guided meditations because I don't want anybody to control me. I want to do my own thing. That's what I'm trying to let go of. And yet I'm using meditation as a way to hold on to it. Like you mentioned about somebody being completely removed from some of the big issues that they face. I did that a lot with meditation. I did that a lot. Meditation can numb you. It numbs you. It makes you become a little kumbaya about everything when there's very serious problems facing you. And you think after 3 hours of meditation, you think the universe will take care of it. Maybe.
It might.
Maybe. If it's not busy that day, it might. But There is a way to remove yourself using meditation, but I think that your sessions, it's much more challenging because you're sitting there listening to somebody take your subconscious on a journey.
Yeah.
It's much more scary. It can be scary. And that's why once or twice I felt a little panic attack because I wasn't in control of me anymore. But in the long run, that has been very helpful.
And it's what I say to everyone really is just don't try to create, just let your subconscious or the universe or whatever show up for you, and then show your conscious mind what it wants you to be looking at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's your mind doing that with me facilitating it.
Yeah.
And then consciously, okay, you may wrestle with some of that, with some of the truths may show up, or it may show up as a friendly little analogy. Like I was just thinking of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, Ghostbusters, the thing that could never hurt us. But when we dig into the deeper, darker aspects of ourselves and our past and all this kind of stuff, there's no way in hell we want to actually re-experience a lot of that stuff. So your subconscious knows that, and we ask it to present it as a safe analogy so that it can be released safely without you having to go, oh geez, you traumatize yourself. Because a lot of people I worked with were re-traumatized, even in a hypnotist's, where they were brought through this process called a rewind technique. It's like an NLP technique, and they're asked to visualize this event, but they're saying don't look at it directly. You're looking at the person, looking at the screen directly. Okay, so you get the event, and then you scrabble forward to the end, and then backwards, and then forward, and then backwards. And now you're sitting in the seat, and you have the remote, and you're looking at this event, and it's fading away every time you do, but you're still looking at a traumatic event.
Yeah.
So it's an old hypnosis IP called a rewind, like I said. And I've worked with people who had experienced that with a hypnotist and re-traumatize them.
Yeah.
And so that's what we don't do. You know what I mean? We don't prescribe or get someone to think of that scary thing. Because often, right, in complex PTSD, it's going to be something much further back that acted as an anchor way back when you don't even remember. And then all of these things built upon this, and you identified that thing that happened a couple of years ago as the problem that caused my PTSD.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And lay all the blame on that. But we're much more complex than that. So you don't even focus on that.
Yeah. I think that's what happens in many humans. We've grown up to live this movie style of existence where everything has a eureka moment. You know, there's an arc. Our entire lives are a narrative with an arc, and it's finding that arc, that turning point that's going to free us. There is that movie, any movie where it's, that's the truth. And then he goes on or she goes on to live a very happy existence. And I think we're to live in that story world where we want a eureka moment, but it doesn't exist. Or it can, but I'm not a psychologist, but I assume that they must exist in very rare circumstances. I think our lives are built up of many little situations, many little learning curves, and many little experiences which shape us and shape our fears and our doubts. You know, that's my feeling.
Yeah. And what doesn't happen around all that is conversation about epigenetics, like that article I sent you last week. So we can change how we react to our own DNA through epigenetics, which can be shaped, and various aspects of our DNA can be switched on and off without actually changing the DNA itself. We can choose to benefit from the very best aspects of what we've been given genetically, and then go, okay, so what if all of my relations died of XYZ, or they're all like fucking hellraisers or whatever? You can choose to accept that or not. And then the whole idea that these things and traits and characteristics can be handed to us from generations back, further than that, imagine. And then sometimes you see a light bulb go on. Oh, so I had this perfect childhood, and nothing.
It's disappointing.
Nothing.
I lived in California. I was disappointed. I was never sexually abused. I'm like, shit, what?
So like, You could have something to hang everything on, justify whatever. And then
Yeah,
you move beyond the epigenetic stuff and the generational, familial, ancestral trauma that was passed on to you as a warning. So you'd be afraid of that thing too, the thing that killed granddad or whatever.
yeah,
And there's some interesting examples of all that. But then we start talking about past lives, and you have an incarnational personality and an incarnational consciousness that you
mm,
move from body to body with your own body, which is
absolutely.
full
Yeah,
of,
that's a very fascinating thing you said.
yeah, which
When
is
my
full of,
father died, I
yeah.
spent months meditating
Mm,
on what is left of me or what was left of my dad after he
mm,
died. I came to such a clear understanding of what is part of us and what is not part of us, what is made up of the mind and what is made up of the spirit, to the point where I began to struggle understanding, like my mother, who would say, you know, you think your father's angry that we did this. And I kept thinking, but there's no anger anymore. He doesn't have anger anymore.
mm,
Anger is a human feeling. Anger is created in our brain. I spend so much time meditating on the idea of being without a brain, without a body, that I struggle to understand why people couldn't see that without the brain and without the body, there is no such thing as anger. There's no such thing as being pissed off. Those are
mm.
purely physical traits. Those
Yeah,
are things that are created
mechanical.
on this earth.
Yeah.
Once you remove the brain, once you remove the body, it's impossible to feel those things. They don't linger. And
Mm,
so it began to be very clear to me what was part of us and what was part of our past lives and future lives. And I began to think, what part of me is left? And I think there was a bit of a transition of liking myself at this stage for the first time ever, liking myself in life, that the parts that are left, I actually quite like. I like that bit. I like the fact that I'm going to be me again. A different package, a different car, a different color, a different whatever, but
mm,
the fundamentals is still going to be Martin, because I kind of realized that over the past, since my dad died 10 years, that there are parts of me that I really do. I really like them. I really think they're fun. I
mm.
enjoy myself. And I love the idea of having those bits with me, that ridiculous optimism, that fucking stupid optimism, hanging from a cliff from a fingernail and under a volcano and thinking, I'll get out of this. Don't worry. I will get out of the situation.
It could be worse. I could have no
It could be
fingernails.
worse. It could be worse. I could have no fingernails. It could be worse.
Yeah.
So I do that part of myself. It's interesting that, again, I think through your sessions, it's beginning to see that core part of yourself. It's beginning to I think that's what your sessions have revealed, is just these layers of experiences, of the human experience, of the spiritual experience, and beginning to isolate them all. I think I've told you many times that we've met after the session that what I feel is this isolate. I'm beginning to see parts of myself. I begin to see layers of myself, what is real and what is not real. And I think from there, I'm not quite able to do it yet, but I think at some point in the future, I should be able to maneuver these pieces.
Mm,
Say, okay, why don't you move here? You're in charge for today. Or listen, dude, you've been around for 50 years. This part of me, I think it's time to move on. You're really bumming me out. I think it's time to move on. Not quite there, but I feel like at some point I should be able to look at these salient parts of me
yeah.
and begin to see what is the blockage. Where am I wrong? What's going on here? Who's the voice that's speaking right now? Who's speaking for me at the moment? And I don't quite believe what you have to say. And so I feel that's where the sessions will eventually go for me.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
just to let you know as well, the session I had planned for yesterday, I didn't do. I pushed it back to next week
Oh,
because
great.
there were a lot of people on holidays, but I wanted to do one yesterday for whoever wanted to show up anyway.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I ran a different session yesterday around self-sabotage and all that kind of stuff, which is a recording that you have access to that you can use.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think it's pertinent that you've mentioned that, but next week's will be about taking the conscious and the subconscious and the superconscious minds and having them all just mesh and support each other
Yeah.
and be in an environment where you can turn up and turn down various aspects of yourself, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like you're isolating and you go, yeah, that part of me, this part of me, that part of me. You'll actually have an environment that you can go into and it can show up differently for some people. They'll have all these complex dials, and then someone else will just have an iPad.
Mm.
Someone else will have like ropes and whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but you can change different aspects of you in that.
That's very cool. That's
Yeah.
very cool. It brings
Yeah.
us neatly to your last question about being on the fence with working with you. You know,
Okay. Yeah.
to me, I think being on the fence is a state of mind anyway. Being on the fence is a very easy place to be in life because being on the fence is a place where nothing needs to happen. So I think to anybody who's on the fence, it's really about making the decision of making something happen. It's, do I want to stay in a period of status quo? And some people do. I did at one point wanted that period of status quo. But I think it's important that people recognize that being on the fence is not a place where you're deciding what to do next. It's a place where you're actually living. Like it is a dwelling. Sitting on the fence is a living place.
Yeah.
The alternative being is doing A or doing B, but the fence is also a kind of A minus or an A plus B minus place. So I think anybody sitting on the fence, decide whether that's the place you want to be, the fence. And if you don't want to be on the fence anymore, then you have to make a decision on how to go forward. In my view, I think that your sessions have been a great way to go forward. So I think anybody on the fence has to make that decision whether they want to go forward or not, or stay where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.